Hey everybody, welcome back to the God XP podcast. I am your host, Anthony Polanco. Today we have the esteemed Miss Erin Cochrane. She is the founder, director of product at Gwella Mushrooms, founder of Healing While Healing, which is a community support network. Very excited and very honored to have her. Erin, you have offered listeners of God XP a discount, so go to mojo.shop and use code GodXP20. And if you're listening on the weekend of Black Friday, which is this weekend, there's other cool discounts and offers for you. So definitely take advantage of those. Erin, if it's our first time on the shop, what do we buy? What's the first thing you want people to try?
The only thing you can try. We are a single product offering at this moment. Mojo is our first product to market, and it was designed by our fantastic and wonderful chief science officer and our team, our product development team, to mimic the pharmacokinetic patterns in the brain as a low-dose microdose. So we wanted to build that legal bridge before regulatory hurdles change and legislation changes for psychedelics and psychedelic use in mainstream applications. And so we found other mushrooms that we love that are incredibly beneficial and a bunch of other bioactive ingredients that all come together to create this creativity, dialed in, tuned in, focus, mood lift product that speaks to the similar kind of reported effects of a microdose. So that is what you will find when you go to mojo.shop. And yeah, hope you like it. Let me know what you think.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. That's sweet. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that, like the development of the first product and just like, how does it go like on a day-to-day basis at Gwella? What does it look like over there? Just like from a high level perspective.
Day-to-day of Gwella. We are a startup born in the pandemic. So like a lot of those groups of people, we are pretty much all work from home, which definitely has its benefits. And we're a pretty small team. Most of us are plant medicine enthusiasts. So we really come to our work with a lot of passion and heart and just really trying to be that like change that we want to see and being a good force in the plant medicine movement and all the exciting stuff going on right now. There's a lot of different people trying to do different things. So I'm director of product, so I get to be pretty responsible for what we create, which is a huge honor and responsibility alongside the other leadership team and things like that. And we have a really amazing creative force of our team that's tapped into advertising and marketing and like some great brand builders. So yeah, we really just try to like align everything that we do on a day-to-day basis to tell the Gwella story, which is increasing access to various plant medicines and the benefits that they have. And yeah, trying to build a ecosystem of support, as we like to call it, for people who want to engage with these different tools, with these bioactives, different compounds in different ways, and do it in a way that's going to feel good for them and is effective.
Does it feel like the Wild West right now?
Yes, absolutely.
That's what it seems like just from the outside looking in. It seems like a lot of fun. There's a lot of companies starting up, a lot of new like intersection companies where they're merging fields, and it seems really exciting. So I can imagine that being like on the frontier of it, it feels like a gunslinging mentality you guys probably have.
Oh my God. First of all, loved that reference. My favorite book of all time is The Dark Tower, and it literally is a story about gunslingers. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out. It's great. Okay. 7-book series if you want to absorb your soul into something for a bit. Okay. But yeah, like you bring up a great point. Literally, one of the things that we say about Gwella is that we operate at the intersection of wellness, mushrooms, and psychedelics. Functional mushrooms have really made their comeback, and I actually started learning about functional mushrooms a couple of years ago. And as I was like watching videos and learning more, and then saw like studies creeping up about psychedelics, and I was already tapped into it, but we'll get into more of that later. But I remember having conversations with people and being like, this is coming. This was like 2018. And I was like, mushrooms are going to be the next cannabis for sure. Like the waves are already starting to ripple. And yeah, now there's probably like 10 companies a day starting, tons of functional mushroom products, tons of new like corporate entities IPing in the psychedelic space. Like there's a lot of first to market, best product. Are we going to legalize speculations? Yeah. A lot of questions being asked, but really cool conversations. So
totally. And
it is exciting.
It's interesting to work in a field where there's not a lot of consumer information yet. So you're also like half of your business is creating consumer information and building intellectual property while creating product, probably.
Yes. The hardest distinction is probably destigmatizing mushrooms as a whole, because functional mushrooms kind of got lumped in with psychedelics. And unfortunately, most people, at least like North American society, unless you're in certain pockets, only are just coming back to hearing things about reishi, lion's mane, chaga, like all of these functional mushrooms that are showing more and more like really powerful benefits for our bodies. But they're like medicinal mushrooms. We get asked so many times a day, oh, these are magic ones. Am I going to trip out?
Right.
Or whatever. And we're like, no, they're different. But they're also super good for you in different ways. Like both medicinal, in their own ways. But it is definitely a huge time of education and destigmatization. So
I've got lion's mane, reishi, and I believe turkey tail in my coffee right now.
Sweet.
I started doing different mushroom compounds in my coffee. It's probably been like a year or two, and I actually got a product, which will remain nameless, that I was like, okay, like somewhat happy
Competitor.
with. Yeah, I was somewhat happy with it. It was like a drink, like a compound mixture for a drink, let's say, morning drink. And I was kind of happy with it, but then I just went, I'm just going to go get my own stuff, and ordered all my own stuff, and then just started making my own coffee with it. So I love it. It's awesome. Like, what's your favorite mushroom? What's Erin's like super mushroom?
I'm a little stereotypical / like totally dad humor on this one. My favorite mushroom is lion's mane because its Latin name is Hericium erinaceus. And my dad used to call me erinaceus when I was a kid. Wow. So as soon as I heard that was its Latin name, I was like, that is great.
That's awesome.
It's a beautiful mushroom. It actually helps stimulate neural growth factor in your brain. And they're studying it to help people who have onsets of things like dementia or Alzheimer's to help regrow like neuron material, basically to help strengthen brain connectivity and things like that. So it's a gangster mushroom.
Yeah.
And it's also, being looked at, if you combine it, there's like the famous Paul Stamets stack of lion's mane plus psilocybin plus niacin, and like you get this like supercharged neuronal growth basically that helps increase connectivity of the brain. And there's a lot of studies and things like that you can check out by Mr. Stamets primarily, but I'm sure there's a lot more now.
That's an amazing like serendipitous thing that like when you really look back on your life, like some of the most serendipitous things are just so small, and then you look like I guess we paint the picture backwards in life, but like little things like that, like finding that your name has a significance to like your path, that's so cool.
I mean, we are 50% mushroom. We share 50% of our DNA with mushrooms. So I'm just half a lion's mane.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So a little bit about me, how I came to mushrooms. I had an experience where like I had a suicidal ideation period in my life, and then mushrooms helped me. It was self-therapy. I did it by myself, but it was very much like a spiritual practice. So I would do these heroic doses by myself every 10 months for about 3-4 years. And then just live out my transformation. And I was just doing this all by myself. I didn't want to talk about it because 2015, it was like on the internet, but it wasn't like it wasn't as popular as it is now. Now there's A-list celebrities coming out and having these
one a week
advocacy. Yeah. So it's like at the time I didn't want to talk about it, and it's become easier and easier to talk about, but had these transformative experiences and then just did a lot of research just like underneath the rest of my life, and allowing that to reach like a critical mass, and then converging on how can I facilitate some kind of, and then also just doing research on my own with these mushrooms, superfood mushrooms, and just picking one and experiencing it, and then figuring out what the difference between chaga and lion's mane from a perspective of how it reacts to my body, and really feeling comfortable with mushrooms before talking about them. So now I feel like I can share my experiences and then talk to people like you and just bring more awareness, you know? And I feel like that's me doing my part, talking about, I had a transformative experience that no one talks about and I had no prior knowledge of. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there who are in a situation where either they've heard about it and been curious, but there's stigma behind it that keeps them from actually walking down that path. And well, it's just one of a handful of things that's transformed my life in such a significant way that I can't help but testify about it in some way.
Amen to that. Yeah. I can definitely get behind that. Really interesting. I think it's really interesting that there's so many people that have gone through similar experiences like that, at least from what I've heard, and not been able to share. Like we started doing a clubhouse a little while back on for Gwella, and we wanted to just hear stories about people's experiences. And the number of people that said that they had taken, especially with psychedelic mushrooms, because it is something that maybe you don't feel as comfortable sharing with that kind of experience. The number of people that said, I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. I don't know if I wanted to talk to anybody about it, but if I had, what would people say? And I think that's, for me, one of the most important things in my experience is like sharing it. So the fact that there are like communities of people coming out now and research bodies who are saying like, these are experiences that need to be shared. And it's our humanity coming together in this shared experience kind of thing. And yeah, it makes me very hopeful that a lot of people that do have those experiences want to talk about it. Because we know that we're like, people need to hear this, and maybe if I just keep talking about it, it'll resonate with somebody, it'll help somebody, it'll shed some light on something, it'll okay it for somebody else. So it's all part of building that picture.
It is, you know, it required, I guess, the collective consciousness waking up to it in order for me to feel comfortable enough to share. And so I wish I was braver early on, but at least the ball has gotten rolling in this direction enough that I feel comfortable. And it's also helped, I think the psychedelic movement has helped me talk about other spiritual aspects of life as well, because psychedelics is like this perfect middle ground for people from spirituality and science to talk about the universe and God and our interconnectedness, because there's like a element of both. There's the element of studying and understanding nature, and then the unexplainable. So I think it's just a beautiful place for the spiritual and the scientific minds to come together and talk about what the hell we're all doing here, you know?
Yeah. Could not agree more. That was actually like that when I started talking to people a couple of years ago about what I loved so much about just mushrooms as a whole was because for me, they're these ancient beings that form so much of the foundations of our ecosystems, of connecting natural systems together under the soil with trees, sharing basically like bioinformation and all these theories about like human evolution and how we've evolved to be conscious. There's things like psychoactive substances and like psychedelic mushrooms that likely play a role in that. And the more we're able to understand our own neurochemistry and what it means to be conscious, the more like that for me is, I think, that kind of central question is that like consciousness and the nature of being. That's where the science and the spiritual comes together in that great conversation around psychedelics. Like you said, is at the end of the day, it really is about like the nature of life. And for us, being the great creatures that we are, getting to ask all these questions, we get to ponder over those relationships and what that dynamic means to us. And we get to bring spirit back into science. And we actually, we hosted a podcast with Dennis McKenna the other day. And that was one of the things that I love about the psychedelic movement as well, is that like all of these researchers are talking about like creating meaning in life and what it means to have a more spiritual outlook on life. And that is the foundations of research happening right now, instead of this, let's break it down to the molecular structure. Like, yeah, obviously that part of it's important, but how we reintegrate meaning into what we do. Because a lot of that kind of like reductionist is the word that he used. Reductionist science is what's forced a lot of the meaning out of our lives. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
that was a long-winded say, but yeah,
totally.
like bringing those worlds together is something that I see critical as like refeeding the soul of humanity. We don't have to look at things as disconnected systems, and we've gotten really good at that.
Yeah, the interconnectedness is so inherent. Mushrooms are like their own thing that exists in our natural world, but they're interconnected with everything harmoniously. So it's such a phenomenon that this thing is interwoven into reality in so many ways, and is related to both plants and animal in so many ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like the terms that I've heard for them a lot, like the great transformers, these like guardians of life and death, because they decompose life. Fungal networks are a lot of time what decompose leaves that fall on the ground, trees as they die. Like they're the recyclers of nutrients into the ecosystem. And so they're like these gatekeepers of life and death. And I think that's such a fascinating thing, because when we think about the role that psychedelic mushrooms play in our subconscious, what they're being studied for right now, end of life therapy and end of life anxiety, like our relationship with life and death is huge. And I certainly don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah, it's that's true when you really think about it, like how spores will find anything decomposing like anywhere. It'll find it in the fridge, it'll find it if you toss something in the backyard, like, and
in space.
And in space.
Find spores in space. They're like one of the few things that can survive.
And that was the connecting experience, or the inherent experience, every time I did a large enough dose of mushrooms, psilocybin. But I was able to confront my death. Every significant experience made me go through a certain door of accepting death. And it's interesting that the mushroom itself, the parallels between life and death and all the surrounding benefits of mushrooms, it's just so amazing that one species, or a network of species, one thing in our reality can do so much, can serve such a large purpose. So like, why mushrooms for you? What happened in your experience that made mushrooms the thing for you?
I mean, that answer has some pretty deep mycelial roots itself. The short answer is exactly what you just said. When I found mushrooms, or mushrooms found me, they were just this organism of endless fascination. And I watched that very classic Paul Stamets video, 6 Ways Mushrooms Can Save the World, and I was blown away. I was like, why are we not talking about this? Like environmental degradation support with like oil spills, and returning things like pollutants into beautiful ecosystems, and the high-powered immunity support that they give. There was just like so many things, like making biomaterials out of them. And that's just like a few of the applications. And then we get into medicinal applications. And I was like, here are these beings that, like you said, we didn't even really have a significant place for them. They're not plants or they're not animals. Okay. But like the queendom of fungi is probably the most under-known or under-talked about species, or like section of species in, or at least maybe prior to 2 years ago, in the world, or at least in North American world. And here they were. And I was like, I need to just find everything out about these that I can. And that has deep roots into my own story of loss, losing my mother when I was really young to cancer. And pretty much from 9 years old, I just started asking really deep questions about life and how life worked, and what were the systems of support that made life good or hard, or why do we suffer, or how can we better support each other? Like those big questions floating around in a 9-year-old's head. And that really Like that was my initiating, my ethos moment, and everything from my life propelled from there. And it led to my studies about holistic health and sustainability and environmental regeneration and intentional communities. And I just kept following this trail of curiosity and all of these different spheres of looking at different ways we build a relationship with our health and, you know, the health of ourselves, the health of our communities, the health of our earth. And then I came to mushrooms and I was like, wow, you touch all of these spheres in the most beautiful ways and the most like undiscovered kind of ways. And yeah, as soon as I found out about that, I was like, I need to learn as much as I can. Went on the slippery slope you did and ended up at a place called the Fungi Academy and learned how to cultivate them and about like ceremonial practice and how to use them in permaculture and all these kinds of things. But yeah, that was really my kind of aha mushrooms moment. Was as soon as I started looking, it was just this whole world that opened up. And yeah, it was just like, they are the answer to a lot of things, or at least one answer that can solve a lot of things or help a lot of things. So how do we make them more accessible? How do we bring them to people? How do we educate? And all that stuff that we said at the beginning.
Yeah, I want to expand on that. Why you went the route of, instead of, let's say, biomaterials, why you went the route of providing it as a medicinal or therapeutic function for people. But I also wanted to point out that on this show, like the thing that links everyone who's been on the show and who's living a life of, you know, contributing to the greater whole, fulfillment of a greater purpose in life, is having an experience with death. And you said that when you were 9 and you lost your mother, you started thinking about life in a different way and you started asking different questions. And I noticed that common thread, including with myself. Like, I had an experience with death. Life changed for me, and I started questioning the meaning of life and asking, why am I here and why do we suffer and these things. And I think that those questions are the driving force that drive people to finding a way to contribute to the ending of suffering one way or another. And so I wonder if you feel that, if it resonates with you, or if you feel that thinking about death, loss, suffering at such a young age drove you to this place where you were able to live a life of pursuing fulfillment and contribution.
Yes, there was a lot of things that I want to address in that was really beautifully spoken, and definitely resonates with me on a lot of levels. I have also met quite a few people who have had experiences of loss, and it does seem to be a pretty common thread. It's always interesting to see where people are at in their journey with that, because it's the same experience, but it happens to everybody differently. Maybe you're a different age. Maybe you have a different relationship with that person. Maybe it's someone close to you, not that close to you. Maybe it was sudden. Maybe it was drawn out and prolonged. And I think what you said is something is really important and true about why death is like this terrible and beautiful thing at the same time. And it took X number of years for me to come to that feeling, but it was that early loss. Like, anyone who's experienced losing a parent to cancer knows, like, to anything, obviously, like, it's not something that is enjoyable to go through. And to watch somebody suffer like that you love so much, and then to experience what it's like for that first time and everything after. It's everyone affected. It was my dad. It was our relationship. It was our family dynamic. It was feeling rejected and lost and bitter and angry, so angry. What do you do with that anger when you're just like, what the fuck is that? Like, the first time it happens, you're like, that's bullshit. And everyone, obviously, there's different ways that cultures look at death. But I grew up in Canada, North American based. Like, I don't think we have a very good relationship with death. It's super fear-based. We Like, nobody prepares us for it. It's talked about in Disney movies, and you're, okay, I get that, like, people die, but I still don't know what to do with myself afterwards when I'm just this raging ball of emotions and sadness.
It's just a total meaningless loss.
Yeah, just a total meaningless loss. And I think that's really the catalyst for what does that mean? And what am I going to do with that? And yeah, like, it's this weird, for me anyways, I lived in this like really weird juxtaposition, as I called it the other day, and I'm growing to enjoy, where this like external part of me was really trying to embrace all of the like silver lining learnings, all of the, wow, life is super fleeting. Like, we don't know. There's no guarantees. We don't know what comes after this. We don't know if it's something great or terrible. We don't know when the ones around us are going to die or something's going to happen. So let's love each other. Let's be good to each other. Let's be kind to each other. Let's care. Let's give a shit. Like, that part of me that was just like, okay, life, I get it. This is a finite thing that I get to do, at least in this soul being experience once. And then the inner part of me that was just like crushed on every level and sowed all these really sad seeds and like dark seeds that manifested in different ways over the course of my young adulthood. And I had to grow through those, and I had to find my way, and I had to look at how those things came out over the next 20 years of my life in my relationships and how I carried myself when I was clearly very internally terrified and didn't know how to talk about it because it was something from 15 years before that I had never dealt with and didn't know how to. And yeah, I think that's why it's something that's so important to talk about. And the more we can build a healthier culture around loss and how we feel about loss, like, it's never going to feel good. But at least what I came to was like a peace of heart, peace of mind, knowing that it's gonna be what we make it. It's gonna be what we make it at the end of the day. And like, taking the good stuff as much as we can. That's what I came to eventually after my long self-healing road as well, was I wanted to find some peace of heart. I was tired of being sad and angry and having it come out in shitty ways that I didn't want anymore. But that was just the reality of how those feelings manifested. And so, yeah, I think it's a super important journey for folks that lose somebody, but there's a lot of beautiful things that come out of it.
Always. I guess that's why I do the show, is because I know that path, that trajectory is always positive. If you can consciously direct your pain, you'll get a positive outcome, and it might take years, and it does take years. It almost always takes years. We're going to grow regardless. It's choosing, consciously choosing to grow from the pain. And that's like a beautiful thing about life. How much of your experience in growing in your direction do you feel was conscious versus just it happened because it happened? Were you writing it down? Were you keeping a journal? This is where I want to go. This is who I want to become. These are problems I have to solve. Like, how much of this was a conscious effort on your part?
Above average, maybe. It's an interesting question because hindsight is 20/20, and I think we'd like to think that we know what we're doing more than we actually do.
Totally.
But one of the things that I was always, and now I do consider it to be very fortunate to be, is that I've always been exceptionally curious, and I have been fortunate enough to be surrounded by people that encourage that curiosity. And especially because I was asking so many questions and I wanted to explore. I was like, I already see what normal life can look like. What does extraordinary life look like? And I always challenged that part of myself. And I feel like I definitely decided my younger decisions because of the things that I was passionate about. Again, like I was fortunate to have a family that supported that. I studied kinesiology because I wanted to learn about health sciences, because I wanted to understand chronic disease and how we can build healthy bodies and minds. And that really all came from that ethos moment of, okay, how do we be healthier? How do we be healthy people? And I think really every decision followed from that. And so kinesiology was my pursuing understanding of a healthy body. My studies of sustainability were about healthy planet and regenerative living. And then my time when I didn't work for 9 months, but I lived out of a backpack and traveled around Latin America and organic farms and stuff and did a bunch of workaways for 9 months. That was really my like spiritual pursuit and understanding psychosocial patterns and how to build communities in a healthy way. That's why I stayed in intentional communities. I wanted to learn what are different models about communities. So I guess, yeah, along the way, it was always because I had that kind of ethos of what does it mean to live a healthy existence, a holistic, healthy existence. Most of my decisions, at least career / energy exertion wise, followed from that.
That's amazing.
I didn't always know where it was going to take me, but I knew what I wanted to learn.
It's like you can feel yourself going up, and then you might be taking a few steps back or sideways, but you can't tell in the moment. You just have to keep moving, you know? But that's beautiful. It's that's one of the benefits of living with an ideal, living with a core value, and just letting that be your North Star in life. That has guided me in my life through so much uncertainty. Just having that inner peace of just knowing like I'm going in the right direction because this is who I am at my core. And if anything else changed, that would be fine. But this one thing, like this is where I want to go in life, and that letting your heart be your guide, if you will.
Totally. Yeah. I like call it cliche all you want, but like the more I've understood or heard about that, like just heart-centered living, like the reason I'm in the job that I'm in today and many of the roles that I've gotten is like when you love what you do, people see it. When you love what you're learning, people want to be a part of it. When you love what you're building, people want to support it. And so it really does, like when you engage with that heart-centered path, like things fall into place more because people see what you're doing and you see what you're doing and you feel consistency. And like you said, it might not be a straight line trajectory, but it generally tends to end up in the places where it's supposed to go. Maybe it takes 10 years, maybe it takes 5, maybe it takes 50, but like you're always taking steps in building that path in a way that still feels good.
Yeah, totally. How does healing while healing fit into all of this? How did you come about? Because that, even just the name, like I'm a sucker for like really good brand names, but like even that, like even the name sounds like something that it works for you and with you. And I think there's something about healing yourself in order to heal humanity that is like that is the chief aim of all higher purpose. Anyone who is living for a higher purpose, they're living in a way that heals themselves and allows them to be like a blessing to humanity in some greater scheme. So like, when was the moment that you came up with this philosophy of healing while healing, and then how did you use that to start a community around it?
Well, first, I want to give you some super kudos / gratitude for sharing that interpretation, because that's exactly what we feel about it. So it's nice to know that it resonates in the way that we wanted it to, or that we feel it for yourself as well. But yeah, healing while healing came out of, for me anyways, it came from my travels across Latin America and in intentional communities, because a lot of them had the practice of holding circles. And I mean, human circles are like one of the oldest traditions, ways of gathering, ways of sharing knowledge, or taking part in ceremony, or all those kinds of things. But it was one of the first times where I had experienced men and women together in that space. And as intentional community members, it does attract a certain type of person. And at least like the leadership or the people who had been there, or the founders, call them, were usually people that were like super authentic, so vulnerable, like just showed up and were like, all right, like amazing space holders and facilitators in their own. And those circles were all about connecting the community and about being able to talk about things that were really real together and connect with each other and see each other and hear each other and air things out maybe that needed to be aired out. So that was one of the places. And then I also joined in for a few women's circles while I was in Latin America. And again, like another space that I've talked with friends before, but this intentional ceremonial type setting where coming together in sisterhood to talk about the experience of womanhood and what that meant to us and how we wanted to share in that together and the things that were challenging us or uplifting each other's wins or just like really connecting with people in this like super beautiful, authentic, vulnerable way. And I felt supported in these settings and so seen by these people that I was like, I want to do this. I want to share this kind of love for other people and connection and build that kind of space if I can. And so when I came back, maybe 2 weeks after I got home from 9 months, I called up one of my friends who shares similar type values. And I was like, hey, I want to start women's circles. What do you think? And I told her why and maybe what they could look like. And she said, funny enough, our other friend has been talking about doing something similar. And this was end of 2019, I think. And yeah, we ended up like, it's none of our full-time job. We all just do it when we have the emotional energy, which while you're co-founding a company is not the easiest thing. So we've created our own internal frameworks of how we want to work and aligned on our mission, and that changes all the time. But basically we're like 3 old friends from university that have evolved and decided that this was something that we wanted to create within our community to provide a safe space for women and hopefully just men and women at some point, different spaces for different purposes, but just wanted to create space where people feel like they can share and be seen and have those kind of vulnerable relationships with people maybe that they don't have in their partnerships, or it takes a village to raise a person just as much as a kid. And we all need the support networks outside of our close friends and family. And yeah, we just wanted to cultivate that. And during the pandemic, like it was like our lifeblood. We would get together on a weekly basis and just have that kind of soul quenching moment where other people just were like, I get it. Like, I get you. I'm here for you. And yeah. So that's what we wanted to do for people.
I think people don't realize how valuable even just 3 to 5 people getting together. That's one of the great things about the internet is like, you can connect with someone who is exactly like you or just someone going through the same thing as you from all around the world. And I think people underestimate the value of even just doing something for 5 or 10 people, having a community that's, because I've been participating in more online communities in the last year, just trying to like get more connected through the internet since we're spending more time at home, And
no kidding, yeah. We all kind of had forced online community time.
Yeah, and I guess the benefit or the value is just so much more than I expected. You can still connect with people, and it's like you said, just spending time in the heart space with another person, even if they're a complete stranger, is so beautiful and valuable. The value of fellowship is so underrated, especially in America. We forget about how important it is to just be heard and be seen. And so I think that's super awesome.
And what that means, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think that's something that's really lost on our society is we're not present. We're not trying to step into somebody else's reality. We've got our blinders on. We've got our phone in our hand. We're thinking about our to-do lists. And that was like the beautiful part about those circles, is like the presence of people just like really being there and really active listening and, you know, like showing up for each other in that kind of way. And like, maybe people have that, maybe you have that in your life, maybe you don't, but it's something that like, I would love to just hear that more normalized, or hear less of people saying that they don't have that or don't feel like they're able to share that. And obviously that's a personal comfort thing. It's not the easiest thing for everybody to just show up and be like, here's my soul on a platter of random people, or people that are my friends that now I'm going to share these deeper parts of me with. It's a practice for us as a society to be able to do that and to be okay with other people doing that. Not saying that should be like an all the time expectation. I do love that I'm seeing more of these types of spaces being cultivated, more of this kind of practice happening in company culture. Like this kind of thing, like I talk about this all the time with our Gwella team, is like how we build that into our company culture in a way that's still like professional and doesn't cross too many personal boundaries, but also creates that space for like
totally
authentic relationships, for humanizing each other and the workforce and the working day and things like that. It's nice to see that is more of the conversation these days.
Yeah, totally. I think it's one of the beautiful things about the way that business is transforming is, rather than a company, a tribe, you know, and we're all a tribe. We're the human tribe. And like the more I think that we can connect with each other, like on a tribal level, it is a spiritual practice. Like you said, fellowship, you know, having some human fellowship. And it's just so underrated. I think I got really into like an introverted life, and I guess I underestimated how important it was for me to just be seen, be heard, and it's like a validation that we don't want to need or think we need, but we're all part of an organism. Like we need to be connected to it, you know. How does the team at Gwella, like, how does it look? What makes a Gwella person? What is your X-Men attributes? What makes you guys different? Like each one of you guys has your own X-Men character, but what do you look for in a Gwella teammate?
Well, we refer to ourselves as Gwellans.
Gwellans. So. That's cool.
That's a nice ring to it, first of all.
The Gwellans.
You know, our chief operating officer, she's a badass. She's been building startup companies since she was 19. And she said to me one day, because she actually tipped me off about the opportunity at Gwella. She was like, hey, Mushroom Girl, found a company that you might be interested to work for. And I was like, cool. She was like, I'm also going to check it out. So we ended up starting around the same time. But so we were in the trenches of the early days together. And she always said to me, build a good team first. Everything else will follow. The idea, the product, the marketing, get the right people in the right places, because that is going to be the make or break. And it's absolutely true. Like we're pretty diligent in our hiring process, mostly from a cultural perspective. We're a startup in the wellness and psychedelic space. Like you gotta be a little bit funky. You probably are a little bit quirky, but we all have this driving passion to be that impact. And that I think is probably the biggest thing. And I've mentioned this to one of our team members, actually. It's a sad but interesting fact that 4 out of, I think, 7 or 8 of our team members, like our full team members right now, have all lost a parent. Just going back to what we earlier said. And we're all pretty adamant people about living that very like heart, passion forward kind of life to drive that positive change. And like when we talk about safe and effective access and building bridges for people to engage with plant medicine and tools to support that journey and whatnot, like I don't take that lightly. I don't take that responsibility lightly at all. And like our team understands these are sacred medicines. And as much as we're trying to make consumer friendly products, with them, there's a huge amount of weight that comes with that. And I think that's really important, is that we live in that line of like mushrooms for everyone and like super regulated medical science. Like we're in that in-between space that's safe and effective, access with tools and guidance and education, and like trying to support it well. So I think there's this kind of fun balance that we all live on the line of like being really diligent and looking to the scientific community for the validation and the research coming out to make the best products, but also like, how do we get more mainstream people to be educated, destigmatized, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it results in a very dynamic group of people.
Each superheroes in their own, I'm sure. It's really inspiring and I think encouraging to hear people talk about their team like everyone is passionate and all on the same page, and each one has their own superpower, and that's what you want out of a team. What does it take to find good teammates? Like, what have you found to be like your secret to finding the right people for your team?
Looking in the networks of people that are already on the team, I think is a good, like, you tend to be peers or to have those kind of networks of similar minded people. So we are very fortunate that within our core group of us, we're tapped into the medical community, the advertising and marketing kind of fields, startup and entrepreneurs, product directors. Like we do have quite a good network of people. And yeah, it's a lot of times it's about the patience to find that right person as well. Yeah. And just knowing what you're looking for, know your criteria, know what it's going to take to have somebody be that rock star that's going to change the game. Like I'm crazy excited and proud of every single person that has joined our team in the last year, because it makes our day-to-day life pretty awesome when you build that team and then you really stick to that foundational culture that's going to make a healthy team dynamic and help you achieve those big dreams that you have. It's a game changer for sure.
It's really about finding the people who embody the passion for they would do it for free and they're doing it on their own. I think we each have fascinations about things, and as close as we can get to those fascinations is like the perfect job, the perfect role for you. Like just finding your passion will give you a position in the right company as soon as you get clear enough about what it is that makes you you. And I feel like that's
absolutely.
That probably defines the team that you've assembled. They're very clear about who they are and what they want to provide and contribute.
I'd say generally speaking, and for those that aren't, are just like heart. Because I completely agree. There's obviously certain skill sets that a team does need, and we have learned that lesson, and I've seen the fruits of those labors. When you have people that have the right experience, it makes a huge difference to just the progress of the work happening, and it can completely bring a team together to have that one or two or three specific roles that are just like, I'm really great at this. And so there's a fine balance between that heart and like dedicated skill set and know-how. And I think we actually have a really good balance of that. We have people that are like, this is what I do and I do it awesome. And then we have some of us, myself included, that are definitely the like heart and passion of a Jill of all trades that like has the product knowledge expertise and has now turned it into the applicable business department that it fits in. But yeah, I think it is good to have a mix of that, because you have the people that understand the strategy and then you have the doers, and it's a good mix.
That's awesome. That's really cool. What is Gwella's position in the universe? What is the ultimate outcome, ideally, that Gwella contributes to the universe before its time is up, as it continues on? What is the ultimate aim and the ultimate outcome?
So I think previously I mentioned that support ecosystem. And for me, Yeah, I think that's my favorite term for it, or to answer that question, is that we talk about making these plant medicines accessible, be they functional mushrooms, be they psychedelics. And what we talk about as our goal for Gwella is actually Gandalf, to use a term that we used in our strategy sessions, is because so many of our team members have not only personal experience with psychedelics of many varieties, we also have this kind of multifaceted, multidisciplinary view stance. And so we have a lot of innate wisdom in our team to help cater different information to different groups of people, to help meet people where they're at in their journey of exploring plant medicines. And dream goal, our role in the universe, is really hoping to be that guide or support system, a bridge, where people can come and engage with our education, our community, our tools, and learn to explore themselves and explore what their relationship with like mushrooms, their own personal well-being, their own consciousness, plant medicines. We want to be an access point for that.
That's awesome. How, when people look at Gwella through the lens of product, because I'm sure a lot of people will, like, how far off are they in like the perception of what you guys are doing versus what's actually going on, what you're building behind the front end? Like, how far off are people who assume that Gwella is mostly just churning product?
So like, how would I address people that might say, oh, Mojo, Gwella, you guys are just creating a consumer packaged good?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I mean, I've had a few conversations like that. Knowing the plant medicine community, there's understandably concern from people who have experience with psychedelics, plant medicine, sacred ritual, ceremony. Like, there's definitely a rub point between like ancient medicines and modern technologies and form factors and ways of consuming things. And so there's definitely friction points when it comes to like creating modern products with these things that have been used in ancient traditions and ceremonial practice and for like more sacred usage or medicines, things like that. So it is something that we definitely encounter and try to be very mindful of, but we work with the tools that we have and the tools and know-how that we have. So if people want to say you're creating a chew, like you guys are like, there's no psilocybin in it. And we're like, yeah, there's no psilocybin in it because it's illegal. But we still wanted to create something that was legal that people could enjoy and hopefully give them like positive health benefits while this illegal product is in the works. And obviously people can get their hands on the illegal stuff if they really want to. But for consumers who are still working through that destigmatization or concern or challenges with it, like, that's the whole point for us of creating access in other ways and creating education in other ways. You're always going to come up against something, and people will usually you're going to see what you're going to see. And we do our best to try to tell the story. I guess that's what it comes down to, is like creating that story around the brand, creating the story around the product that supports that notion of access and intentional usage and creation and designing things that uplift and elevate these old systems or older systems of medicine, but make them into new form factors that people are going to be like, I don't love chewing on raw mushroom, but I will eat a gummy. So these people still get to get the benefits.
Yeah.
So it's like telling enough of that story so that it's not a bombardment of this is everything about us and everything we're trying to do, but making it like, it's tangible. We want it to be tangible in the brand that like there is an ecosystem around this. There's enough education. We're letting you into the lab and the science behind it and why it works the way that it works. Like, we're not trying to close any doors or keep any secrets or just be like, here's our product.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, it's how you tell that story is very important, especially in a very nuanced industry like this and with very nuanced products like a microdose mimicking chew.
Totally. And product education is that's why it's such a big part of what you do. I also would have just accepted that you just tell people to fuck off because it's none of their business. But I think
maybe internally we say it every once in a while. No, just kidding.
I think people underestimate when they see a product, behind every product is usually the company who produces a very simple product is also a media company and a research company, and it takes so much research to finally put out a product that seems really simple. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about product, and I guess about marketing as well, is it just makes things seem like it took 5% of the work it actually took,
Oh yeah, this flawlessly presented, creative, it's just beautiful, thousands of hours.
Yeah.
Thousands of hours. Our chief science officer started doing R&D on Mojo 10 years ago. It was actually his passion project, and we re-brought it to life when we ended up starting to work with him. But yeah, it's obviously maybe a little bit easier to tell people to F off. But I'm the daughter of a teacher. I come by it honestly that I truly just want to educate people and be like, maybe that's your opinion. I'm sorry that you see that way. Let me help you maybe see it a different way. We can, I don't know. I the whole idea of radical accountability, I guess I take very seriously, is that I'm accountable for my part of this relationship. And so as a company, we are half of a relationship and our consumers being the other half of that relationship. So if we're going to uphold our half of the relationship to a high caliber, then, it means going into the trenches of the nuances, especially with the products or with products that are the types that they are. It's what we signed up for being in this field, in this industry, because it's so new, because there's so many nuances of it and a lot of history. So
that's exciting. That's what makes it exciting.
There's never a dull moment, that's for sure.
When you have an industry where regulations are being created while you're building, that's it. There's always going to be change. Your business is going to have to be as dynamic as the changes are occurring, which is frequently. So that's it's a really interesting place to be.
That it is, yeah. We always, especially anyone that's worked in a startup, you can attest to the fact that a lot of times you're building the plane while you're flying it.
Totally.
Flying by the seat of your pants and showing up as best you can every day until things hit a bit of a smoother patch. But they're few and far between for the first little bit. But yeah, it's rewarding and challenging all at the same time.
What's your optimistic take on an individual's ability to transform themselves? What is your optimistic take on individual change? Do you think people can change? Do you think that people are changing more now than ever, or than in your experience? Do you feel like there's a certain special thing about individual change during this time of your life? I just want to know what your optimistic view on the individual's commission to change, opportunity to change, and how that's going to change the world in your timeline.
I would definitely say I'm a pretty optimistic person by nature. Maybe I believe in human potential at its most fundamental. And I've found a lot of personal peace examining human evolution and understanding our current trajectory. Our evolution right now is happening crazy fast compared to what it used to. And obviously technology, being able to do this, have conversations with people across the world, we are able to reflect and learn at such a fast rate. Look at the last 2 years. Obviously, there was exponential change happening all over the world because of the pandemic, but for one of the first times in human history, like the last time this happened, we weren't nearly as connected. And now this time, we're already also connected, but now we can reflect on social circumstances and individual circumstances and community circumstances and things that aren't going well about human behavior. And so, whereas when we think about human evolution, it used to take how long for ideas to make their way around the world? So by the time somebody over in Greece finds out and they're like, oh, philosopher, da, 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 why don't we think about it this way? And now it travels back. Like, we don't have to wait that long anymore to have our own behaviors reflected back at us. And I think that's why, like, pie in the sky dreaming, I think a really interesting thing that's come together about individual healing and mental health being such a prevalent conversation these days, combined with our extreme connectedness and ability to talk to each other about these things, and more people talking about authentic, vulnerable communication, and sprinkle a little bit of plant medicine in there, which is like a super catalyst for consciousness exploration and things like that. I think we're in a really primed kind of state for a lot of like transcending and personal transformation. If anything, the great resignation that's going on right now is a huge indicator of that. People are really questioning, and it's like those of us that have lost parents, like the world just went through a huge time of loss and grief, and it made people ask questions. And I think these are really important moments that are going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of breakdown before the breakthrough. But I am definitely optimistic, especially as more people learn how to and want to be facilitators for healing and are talking about healing and just okaying the fact that, yeah, we're kind of all subject to some intergenerational traumas in our own ways, but we're talking about it now, and about racial trauma and like these things that people have had to deal with. And it's always been a part of human society. Like, we're having more conversations and they're hard, but it's opening the doors for, I think, just like, again, that like those beautiful things to come out of it, for those evolutions to come out of it. And we can really expedite it now because we have this connected access. So I think my optimistic view for individual and collective empowerment to wellness is that it's never going to be a perfect equation. We're never going to have every single person on this planet feeling fulfilled and all of that. But I think we're at a really interesting juncture that is going to hopefully lead into a really interesting next 20 to 50 years of exponential expanding consciousness and meaning making in our lives again. And I'm really excited about that. There's gonna be a lot of bumps in the way, but there's a lot of really important seeds that have been planted over the last few years that are gonna blossom into something pretty great.
That's encouraging, and that's motivating to me just to hear you talk about it. I totally agree, but just hearing you say it, it's wow, this is the inflection point of so much transformation. I like how you said that the things that are wrong about the world are being exposed in minutes. Instead of it taking 30 years to find out someone, there's a lot of, the healing can happen faster, and and everything that's wrong with the world will look really good healed in about 5 or 10 years from now.
That's a short timeline, but yeah. I like your ambition. But yeah, and I think it's like, it was really intense last couple of years. Not only was it pandemic and fear and loss, but like social upheaval after social upheaval, and the fact that everyone was so tuned into it, and people's eyes were just being opened all over to the place to other people's lived experience. I had no idea that was their lived experience. I had no idea they went through that. Like, that is incredibly powerful. And as much as it's emotional baggage for everyone, like, there were some really heavy times throughout the last couple of years where it was like, I can't look at social media today because it's hard. It's a lot to digest. We're not emotionally prepared to deal with that amount of like truly like global societal trauma
Crying out.
once.
Yeah.
So I think like there are some balances there, and really at the end of the day, like you have to tap into what you're able to engage with for yourself. But I like that there's more individual empowerment to do that, for people to set boundaries, for people to engage with things when they can. Okay, I have the emotional availability today to deal with this thing that is really challenging, or no, I don't. And that's okay too. That's something that we talk about a lot with Healing While Healing, is it's great to heal, but don't, like, we've all gone through those phases of consuming ourselves with our own healing or something like that. And it's okay to step outside that. But engage with the joy, engage with the fun. Like, these are all the reasons that we're healing to begin with, is we want that joy in our lives and in our friends' lives and our community's lives. So yeah, important to come back to that in the healing process, like healing centered, as much as the difference between like healing centered versus trauma centered, like not focusing as much on the trauma, but understanding the dynamic of what brings those two things into existence together.
Yeah, definitely. It was like forced to realize that I was focusing way too much on fixing myself and not being happy with having been fixed, you know, and not just being happy with the healing that I've already had. And I think this pandemic's forced me to appreciate the healing I've already had and just appreciate myself, because I can just do with what I have and enjoy life now. And that's an important part of it as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like important stages of it. Like I knew when I needed to seek it. I knew when there were things that were within me that were like, this is not getting better until something is done.
Yeah.
So there was that intentional seeking of, which I think we all have. And I love that as I learn more and more about people, is we're all pretty attuned to our own like self-healing meter of, I am not feeling good. It's like the ability to recognize that and know where to go, or have the support system in place to be able to talk about those things. So, but then, yeah, I came to, not the end, it's definitely, I am still healing while I'm healing. But yeah, knowing when to step out of that seeking mode and back into the engaging mode. And for me, that was a huge thing, because I had felt a lot of things about life for a long time. And when I was like, no, I'm ready to engage with this in the ways that I want to again. And that was a really important step after the seeking and the healing and the building. It was like, all right, time to life. I can do the life thing. This is good. And being able to share that then, or recognize it. But yeah, important stages serving different functions.
I think that's why I have so much faith in humanity, because I know that the intuition that guides me is got to be similar to everyone else's. And no matter how bad life gets, we all have that little voice inside us that tells us, you can do it. That early voice that reminds us that we can be superheroes, that like that superhero story is still out there. There's a way that this timeline can go, or I emerge from this suffering and become that person that I always knew I could be. And I think that's why I have faith in people, no matter how bad their life might be. Like, we all have that little voice inside that just tells us, don't give up. There's still this one little thing you haven't done. You haven't turned over that one rock. Just go turn it over and then see what happens. When things were hard for me, that voice was there to keep me from checking out. And I know that voice speaks to other people in similar ways. And so I just hope that these conversations like this can be a little catalyst in that for people who need it. So, yeah. I really appreciate
Concur.
getting to know about Gwella and what you're doing with your mission. It's very inspiring, motivating, and definitely want to keep in touch with your story. And anytime you want to talk about anything, you're always welcome to come back.
Thanks so much.
What's the last question?
Really nice.
Yeah. Do you feel like I guess the only one thing I wanted to ask you is if you could give us like one universal truth about life that people listening could benefit from, if they would apply it to their life, that they could experience more of life, that they could have a little taste of what blesses you in life, what is that one universal truth that you can share with us?
One. Just one. I think there's a lot of little tidbits that come to my mind, but I think being kind to yourself. I said it at the end of one of the other podcasts that I did, and it really hits home for me. 'Cause I think the story that we tell ourselves about who we are is really important. And I think being kind to ourselves is really important, because when you're kind to yourself and you love yourself for everything that you are, your story is your story. And it's okay. It's okay that there's lower points or harder points or amazing points, or that you're not this or whatever. Like, it's okay. And it makes it more okay when you come back to that kindness and that love of self. Because for me anyways, that's my anchor that I lost somewhere along the way. And that's where my ship was floating around, and regrounding in that like self-goodness, self-worth. That's what really allowed me to show up as me and be like, yeah, I am who I am. And we all are who we are. And to be able to be proud of that and feel good about that in whatever state it looks like at the moment is super liberating. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Be kind to yourself. The fruits of that will make life sweeter. It might not make it easier, but it makes it easier to withstand the hard parts, and it makes the good parts taste sweeter. And that's one of the blessings of having an inner kindness. And I've definitely experienced that in my own life. And that's why I can taste its wisdom when you say
it. Wow, that was delicious.
This was really fun. You're always welcome. Everybody, please check out GwellaMushrooms.com, mojo.shop. Use code GodXP20. Follow Erin on social media. Do you do social media? Or you just Gwella Mushrooms on social media?
I have a little bit of my own social media, but definitely more. I'd say follow Gwella for anything mushroom/psychedelia related.
Keep up with Gwella online everywhere. I follow Gwella on LinkedIn, and I love all your stuff on LinkedIn. The podcast is awesome.
Check out the podcast, super psychedelic.
Erin, we appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Appreciate you. Thanks for this. This was great.
Thanks so much, everybody.